Well, hello and welcome back to Promises Kept, the Bible study in which we've been taking a look at the promises of God. We've been looking at them over 5 months and we've been striving towards 150, and today we're getting super close. We're on number 146. But I don't want you to stop listening, because this is a promise of God which is just going to blow your mind if you've never seen it or heard it before. It's found in the Old Testament. It's found in the book of Isaiah. It's chapter 53, and our promise verse is verse 5. And let me read it for you. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. And there's the promise: with his wounds we are healed. Now, some of that might not make sense to you, but it certainly does hopefully make sense to you where it says, but he was pierced for our transgressions. That's the first line of our promise. And again, this is in the book of Isaiah. This is in the Old Testament. This is a verse that was sitting here for 700 years before Jesus was ever born. And it says, he was pierced for our transgressions, for our sin. Let me just say for the record here that the piercing that happens with crucifixion, that was not invented until the Persian Empire, which was another 200 years. So the actual act of crucifixion was not even invented yet. Persia invented it, and then obviously Rome perfected it. But back in Isaiah's day, it was stoning, maybe hanging by the neck. That would be the way that they would kill somebody, but not crucifixion. It wasn't even a thing yet. But here, sitting in Isaiah 53, as I said, 700 years before Jesus was ever even born, is a reference to him, the Messiah to come, being pierced for our transgressions, right? Our sin, he was pierced for our sin. He was crushed for our iniquity, our shortcoming with God, right? He took the punishment for our shortcoming. Upon him was the chastisement, the punishment. Upon him, Messiah, was the punishment that brought us peace. Peace with God. Everybody, every human is not at peace with God, because every human is born into sin. Born to be a little liar, a little thief, a little angry person, a little screaming baby. Every single person has this sin nature. Every single one of us. And because of the sin nature that we have, we're not at peace with God. God cannot be around sin, and so sin makes you an enemy of God. It makes you at war with God. And so by no doing of your own, just by virtue of your birth to your parent, who was in the long line coming right from Adam, you have this sin nature which makes you an enemy of God. But upon him was the punishment, the chastisement that brought us peace, in parentheses, with God. With his wounds, he was pierced for our transgression. With his wounds, we are healed. We are healed. We get spiritual healing. We get the guarantee that we will be in heaven forever, in a glorified, healed body. All of that is in one verse, Isaiah 53:5, in your Old Testament. And so maybe you didn't believe in Jesus before I just read that, but you should really start thinking that maybe what the Bible says is true. If it could predict the crucifixion of the one, the Messiah, who was to come to save us from our sin so that we could be healed into heaven. I'm going to read the rest of this just because if that didn't already blow your mind. The rest of this should. I'm going to start actually in Isaiah 54, and I will start with verse number 13, and I'm just going to read, and I'll fill in the gaps. Hopefully you know something about Jesus. Even if you don't believe in Jesus, maybe you know the backstory about Jesus, you know, what he was like, what he did at the time of his punishment and the court cases and all that. Maybe you don't, but I'll fill in the gaps for you as I'm reading from the book of Isaiah, 700 years before Jesus ever walked the earth. Let your ears perk up to what the Bible predicted would happen. Isaiah 54:13. Behold, my servant shall act wisely. He shall be high and lifted up and shall be exalted. High and lifted up. It's all over the Bible as somebody being lifted up on the cross. High and lifted up and shall be exalted. So you can take it both ways. High and lifted up on the cross, but high and lifted up, my servant eventually is going to be high and lifted up back on his royal throne in heaven as King of Kings. Verse 14. As many were astonished at you, now it's switching tense, astonished at you, now it's talking to the person who's high and lifted up. As many were astonished at you, his appearance was so marred beyond human semblance, and his form beyond that of the children of mankind. Maybe you've seen the Mel Gibson movie, what the heck was it called? The Passion of the Christ. Maybe you were not even able to watch it, as is very hard for most Christ followers to watch. But if you did watch it, you saw that Christ actor was marred beyond recognition. He was scarred beyond belief. It wasn't just the crucifixion. It was what happened before the crucifixion. The whipping, the flogging, the crown of thorns, the pulling out the beard, the spitting in the face. He was marred beyond human recognition. Skin, meat ripping off of his body by the cat o' nine tails that would hit his back and then be ripped away. It was horrific what happened to Jesus before the crucifixion. And here, 700 years before he was ever born, Jesus was ever born, it says, his appearance was so marred beyond human semblance and his form beyond that of the children of mankind. So shall he sprinkle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. For that which has not been told them they see, and that which they have not heard they understand. So now it's talking about the far future, that this act, this marring beyond human semblance, shall turn into the sprinkling of many nations. Kings shall shut their mouth because of him. This act that happened to him is going to turn around and be the thing that exalts him. That's what that is saying. Now, Isaiah 53, verse 1. Who has believed what they have heard from us? Question mark. Nobody seems to have heard this, even though it's sitting here in your Bible 700 years before Jesus was born. The Jews missed it, and maybe you've missed it too, but hopefully today you'll see it. And whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Well, it's being revealed to you right now. Hopefully you are listening. For he grew up before him like a young plant, like a root out of dry ground. It's talking about the fact that he grew up on the earth. This person that we're talking about, that was exalted, lifted up, appearance so marred beyond recognition. It's just saying he grew up as a young child. He sprung out of the dry ground in the middle of the desert. And Jesus is from Israel. He grew up like a young plant. And he grew like a root out of the dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was just a regular guy. That's all over the Bible, right? He wasn't picked because he was beautiful or tall or amazing. We see this in the Old Testament when they picked Saul. Part of the reason they picked him is because he looked good. He was tall and handsome and all that. Not Jesus. The Bible says here that he had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He's just a regular Israeli-looking guy, a regular Jewish guy. And verse number 3, he was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hid their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. So now moving into his ministry years, people despised him. They hated him. They rejected him. Obviously, it led to them claiming that he was blaspheming and sending him to the Roman courts for a dog and pony show type of trials, and they wanted nothing to do with Jesus. They missed this. They missed everything that was predicted in the Old Testament about him. They missed it. And because of that, he was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. It grieved Jesus that Israel rejected him. He said, oh, how I've come to gather you like a hen. I weep over you, Israel. It tore his heart apart that the Jewish people would not see him, especially when things like this in the book of Isaiah were sitting there 700 years that anybody could read. And there's more than just in the book of Isaiah. There's all kinds of predictions of Jesus in the Old Testament, but they missed it. Verse 4, surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. So it's Jesus who is carrying the sin of the world, the grief of the world, the sorrow of the world. Everything that makes the world terrible was cast on Jesus on that cross. And some of these verses, all it says that, that he was a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. He borne our sorrows. He bore our grief. He carried our sorrows. It's just showing you that Jesus knows what it is to be human. He knows what you are going through right now. Jesus, he's alive in heaven, but he lived here on earth, and he knows what it's like to be a human. 100% human, 100% man, 100% God. That's who Jesus is. And he lived 100% the human existence. And so he is able to be acquainted with our sorrow and our grief that is part of the human experience. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. So smitten by God. It was God who smite Jesus. Afflicted by God. Those people that sent Jesus to the Roman cross, they didn't crucify Jesus. Jesus was sent there, walked there, because God, his Father, gave him a mission. And Jesus chose to accept that mission. He was smitten by God. Many people, like I know, before I was a Christ follower, I didn't want to watch that movie, The Passion of the Christ, because in my mind I thought it's just going to make Jewish people look bad. It was a warped concept of Christians that all they wanted to do was make the Jewish people look bad for crucifying Jesus. Let me be the first to tell you, as a Christ follower now, that it wasn't Jewish people that crucified Jesus. It was God, the Father, who had this plan from the beginning of time to send his Son, who was also with him eternally before the beginning of time, to send Jesus to the cross to be smitten by him. All of the punishment on Jesus was by God the Father, and that was done to save you, to save humanity from the eternal consequence of sin, which is separation from God in hell. So this was the plan for Jesus to be smitten by God, afflicted by God. Here it is sitting in the book of Isaiah. And then our verse, but he was pierced for our transgression, crucified for our sin. He was crushed. Oh, was he crushed? Flogged, whipped, beaten. It was awful. Crushed for our iniquity, our shortcomings. Upon him was the chastisement. He took the chastisement that brought us peace with God. And with his wounds, every one of the wounds that was afflicted to Jesus before he was crucified and while he was crucified, we are healed by that. If we believe in him and what he did on the cross, we will have healing, eternal fellowship with God the Father. That was the whole point. The plan before the beginning of time was that Jesus would go to that cross for us, for our iniquities, so that we would be healed. That the affliction of God would go to Jesus, on Jesus, instead of onto us. If it was taken by us, it would mean eternity in hell. And this is where God's escape plan was predicted way before it ever happened. Sitting here in the Hebrew scriptures, waiting for any Jewish person to read them and connect the dots when Jesus came, but they didn't. Verse 6, importantly, all we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord laid on him the iniquity of us all. So every single human being that's ever drawn a breath on planet Earth, every single one of us has gone astray. We're sheep that are just following our own way. Every single one of us has sinned. Can't help it. And because of that, the Lord laid on him, Jesus, the iniquity of us all. Jesus took the penalty, the sin of everybody, past, present, future. It was all taken on Jesus. Spiritually, supernaturally, the sin of every human was transferred to Jesus. And all you have to do is to believe that that's what happened in order for your sin to be wiped away, because the punishment that you deserved got put on Jesus. So just picture him up there on the cross with your sin, your adultery, your lie, your anger on his shoulders as he hung there. And then God the Father, wrath of God, poured out on Jesus. And as that's happening, you are cleansed. You stand there, nothing on you, absolutely free of sin. You are now at peace because God's wrath was cast upon Jesus. The iniquity of us all was placed on Jesus. And in order for you all to have that, it's a transference, his penalty instead of your penalty. In order for you to partake in that, you just have to believe. You just have to believe. Have simple faith that it happened. There's enough evidence out there on the globe that it is true, that you should believe. And maybe this, me reading you Isaiah, end of Isaiah 54, 52 and 53, maybe me reading you those verses will help you to believe that this was not a hidden secret. This was the plan, and this is what God accomplished. Verse 7, he was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that was before its shearers is silent, he opened not his mouth. I just read it this morning in my own private time. You can go to the end of the book of John and you can read how Jesus, when he was brought in front of the kangaroo courts, he did not say a word. He did not defend himself. He did not try to say, yeah, but none of that. He had a couple of things that he had to say, but he said them, and after that, he was silent. There was absolutely nothing coming out of the lips of Jesus, as predicted by Isaiah 733 years before it ever happened. By oppression and judgment he was taken away, and for his generation who considered that he was cut off from the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people. How many different ways can you say it? That he was cut off from the land of the living. He was killed on that cross. He died. Stricken for the transgression of my people. He was killed for other people's sin. And they made his grave with the wicked and with the rich man in his death. So his grave, he died up there on that cross with the wicked. There were two people on either side of him. They were robbers. They deserved to be up there. Jesus didn't deserve to be up there, but he was up there with the wicked, and he died up there. And with a rich man in his death. So he was buried in a rich man's tomb. It was given to him, cut out of stone. They just shuttled him off into it. He was given a rich man's tomb. Although he had done no violence and there was no deceit in his mouth. Jesus never sinned. He never did a violent thing. He never lied. But yet he was up there taking the punishment like he was a wicked, evil person. And at that moment, up there on the cross, he became sin. He became violence and lying and stealing, and he became the sin of the world up there. That is what the Bible said. So although he had never done anything, that is what he became. And God the Father struck him down dead for the violence, the sin, the lying that you and I and the rest of the world did. Yet it was, this is verse 10, yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for guilt, he shall see his offspring. He shall prolong his days. The will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. And there it just says it, that this was God's will, that the Messiah would go to that cross for other people. His soul makes an offering for guilt, for the guilt of the whole world. Verse 11, out of the anguish of his soul, he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many to be accounted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. I think that's the 6th time we've heard it. Jesus bears the iniquities of the world, and he makes many to be accounted righteous. We've talked about that again and again in this Bible study, that Jesus makes you righteous. What Jesus did on the cross makes you have right standing with God again. You become in right standing, righteous, because of what Jesus did. And it says it here that he makes peace with God on our behalf for what he did. He gives us peace with God. He makes us back in right standing, right fellowship with God the Father. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the many, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul to death, and he was numbered with the transgressions. Yet he bore the sin of many and makes intercession for the transgressors. I don't even want to count it. It feels like 15 times in there it says that the Messiah, Jesus, is going to bear the sin of the world. He's going to do it, and he is going to pour out his soul to death. He was numbered with the sinners. This is him bearing the sin of many, making intercession for transgressors. This is what Jesus's mission was on earth, laid out 700 years before it ever happened. And unfortunately, the Jewish people missed it. They wanted Jesus to come as conquering king. They thought the Messiah was going to come and overthrow Rome, but they missed these verses and many others like them that said that first the Messiah had to wipe away the sin of the world. God's first intention was to make sure that everybody had access to heaven. Anybody who believes in what the Messiah was going to do on the cross, anybody could have access to heaven. That was job 1. Job 2, yes, is going to be he's coming back, conquering king, and he's going to wipe out everybody who doesn't believe. Because God will have a kingdom full of people that believe in him on the earth. And that was the deal from the beginning. He wanted Adam and Eve and everybody in humanity to just be his people, and he was going to be their God, and everything was going to be peaceful on the earth. Well, he didn't get that because of Satan and Adam and Eve, and yet he will have it. But first he had to make a rescue plan. He had to make the way that everybody could have their sin wiped away that was transferred to them because of what happened in the Garden of Eden. It's not fair. I think, God's mindset, it's not fair. Adam and Eve, Satan, all this happened, and then humanity just got corrupted, and it's not fair that everybody on earth is just living in this sinful nature because of what happened at the creation of humanity. So God had this rescue plan made before the beginning of time. He laid it out here in Isaiah. The Messiah was going to come and take the transgression of the world on his body so that everybody could have peace with God again. And then, hopefully, at the second coming, everybody was going to already be believing, and there was going to be kingdom on earth with Jesus as the king, ruling and reigning. God was going to be God, and the people were going to be his people, and God is going to get what he wants. But the order of the rescue plan is very clear. First coming, salvation for sin of the world. Second coming, crushing of all those who do not believe. And so I hope today you'll go back and read the end of Isaiah 52 and all of Isaiah 53 and get the promise. If you believe in him, you will be healed. Your soul will be healed, and you will go to heaven forever with Jesus. All it takes is faith in what he already did for you. Took away your sin, your iniquity on that cross. Okay, see you next time. Bye now.